if you're just logging on, this is Keona Miller, and I would like to thank you for joining our senators today for this important roundtable discussion. And we have got Richard Edwards from the NAACP, Mrs. Kimberly Yanta from the New Jersey State Bar Association, and my screen is going on me. Senator Nicholas Scutari. We have Mr. Kristen Estevez with us today, Senator Teresa Ruiz, and a final panelist will be joining us momentarily. So we're going to go ahead and get started. And with that, I will turn over to our Senate President, Senator Sweeney.
Keona, before you do.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Senator Cunningham is here.
And I've had some difficulties with the technician. Yes, technical difficulties, but I'm here for both.
Okay.
Keona, can you maybe change, whoever has control over this, can you maybe change her name so that we can see that she's available?
I will see if we can do that.
Okay.
Anything else before we get started?
No, I guess we're ready.
All right. So Senate President, it's all yours.
Okay. Well, you know, we thought this was a good idea to put a panel of experts together to have a conversation now that marijuana was legalized by a 2-to-1 margin in the state of New Jersey, that we can start moving forward and fixing some of the wrongs here. And I'm not going to do most of the talking. I'm going to let everyone else jump in, and I'll jump in at later points. But really, I want to start off by recognizing Senator Scutari. Nick's been at this for, it seems like forever. You know, he was the father of the medical. You know, he started talking marijuana when we all thought we were crazy to even ever think we could do anything with legalization of marijuana. So with that, I'd like to start with Senator Scutari. Nick?
Thanks, President. Obviously, success has many fathers, and without the Senate President and without all the other legislators that were in support of this over the years, obviously there was a lot less when I first started this journey. Some of you have been there. I know Richard and I have talked many times over the years, and I appreciate your steadfast support for this issue. As the Senate President said already, by a 2-to-1 margin. I mean, these are things that you and I already knew, that the people of New Jersey were supportive of the idea. It was the legislators that just aren't. And some of them still aren't, quite frankly. They just cannot wrap their heads around the fact that this substance will be legalized at the beginning of the year. And if we fail to take action with respect to this type of regulatory process, then I would not begin to, as a lawyer, consider what would happen. I don't know how, without a regulatory framework passed before the first of the year, how arrests can continue. I don't know how they would be. I would be happy to challenge those on constitutional grounds if people continue to get arrested after the first of the year, if we take no action on a regulatory framework. So I want to thank the Senate President. Obviously, I want to thank Governor Murphy for also cheerleading this over the last couple of years. And I do appreciate the senators that, even though not opposed to it, were willing to allow us to put it on the ballot, because without that, we wouldn't be sitting here today. So as I've said before, I didn't do this for the money, for the tax revenue, although it's a nice secondary effect of it, taking a black market and an illicit market and making it legalized and making job creation and an economy boom. I think you're going to see all of this as time goes on. And then in terms of where the money goes, that was never that was never really what I was concentrating the most on. I know the Senate President and I and the leaders in the other house, as well as the governor, we never really talked about where the money would go. We didn't want to get into that because obviously everybody has their ideas of where that money should go. But I'm certainly open-minded as to the areas in which are most in need in terms of what is produced as a result of that, and I'm open-minded to it. But really want to say thanks to everybody on this call, because you're all people that helped make this day happen. And this day is not here yet. We're hoping next month we'll have a regulatory framework in place, and we'll see this normalized over time. If you go up to Montreal, you go to Denver, the sky hasn't fallen. This is just normal way of life, and a lot less people are getting arrested as a result of it. So thank you, Mr. President.
Thanks, Senator. And you know, we in the Senate made clear where we want the tax dollars to go. Communities that are impacted. In fact, we have a constitutional amendment to mandate where that money goes. It was never about taxes. Everyone thinks this was about taxes and this was going to save the state budget. It's not. And we never looked at it that way. What we would like to do is make sure that 70% of all tax dollars that are raised and 100% of the impact fee go to impacted communities. We made our position very clear. And 30% would go to law enforcement to help law enforcement. But the majority of the money is going to go into the communities that have been impacted, like Bridgeton, where I live, down by me. And you know, we all have communities that have been impacted. Bridgeton, Salem City, down by me, Newark and Patterson and Jersey City. There's plenty of space all around the state, and making sure that money goes to help basically help change people's lives and second chances. So for me, it's more about people working in the industry. You know, when I went out to Colorado with Senator Scuteri, talked to a lot of people in this industry, and they said we could get 43,000 new jobs, create 43,000 new jobs in this industry. And I'd be just as happy collecting the tax dollars from people that get jobs rather than worrying about this other, worried about the sales tax. With that, I'm going to next turn it over to Senator Cunningham's and Senator Ruiz. These two senators are the leaders when it comes to second chance and reform, from ban the box, giving people a right to vote who have been incarcerated. We have a long list of very positive pieces of legislation that were enacted because of these two leaders taking the lead. Next, Senator Sandy Cunningham.
Yes, thank you very much, Senate President. And first of all, I'm very happy to be here. And unfortunately, here does not include a camera, but I'm still here. I wanted to say, first of all, Senate President, you played a very large role in making all of those things happen. You have been there for people who have needed you the most. And I do want to publicly thank you for that, for everything that you did to help us. I am very happy that you're doing this today, because over the weekend, just for a few minutes, I went to what's called a listening conference, and I listened to people talk about what they thought about this new legislation. And one of the things that was clear is that people were probably more supportive of it if they knew what we were going to do with the dollars. And also people would be more supportive of it if they realized that we're tying it in with the job market, with helping people who are incarcerated come out of incarceration, can get a job, help them get a job, help people who have not been able to make it, to get their lives together without help. And I talked a little bit about the fact that we're looking at this as a next step to helping people get more in life. We're looking at it not just so someone from out of town can come in and get whatever they want. We want this to be something that benefits the community. We're going to have the people from out of town. We're going to have a lot of other kinds of people coming in, but if we're going to sell this to the community, they need to understand that we're really going to do as much as possible to put back into the community what has been taken out. So I thank you for having this. I think someone from the NAACP online?
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to say, I put some numbers together. When we talk about how important this is and how this hopefully will help us in terms of the disparity rate with people who are incarcerated or people who have come out of incarceration. I look at the numbers and it's unbelievable. The American Civil Liberties Union did a study, and it showed that 3.5 more likely to be arrested. African Americans are 3.5 more likely to be arrested in New Jersey than whites. The study showed between 2010 and 2018, about 900 arrests per 100,000 people for New Jersey Black residents by the end of the steady rate. What this is showing, we have to do more to help these people. We have to do more to help the community. We need to do more in terms of jobs, and we need to do more in terms of the laws that control our whatever happens. And I think this is a part of what we need to do to start the change. We've got to give people hope, and hopefully this will help. This will help to turn it around. So I want to thank you for that. Thank you.
Thanks, Senator Cunningham. And again, decrim was a huge piece of this that we're working through, a very huge piece, as important, if not more important, than the legalization of marijuana itself. And with that, I think Senator Ruiz was the lead sponsor on the decrim. Teresa, if you want to jump in.
So I want to jump in. I want to thank Chairman Scutari for his work on this initiative. I know what it is to think about policy, and people are looking at you like you're the only one and you're screaming in a vacuum. So for having that kind of foresight, but I do want to correct him on one thing. He said there are a lot of fathers that have given birth to a lot of successes. There have been a lot of mothers that have given many births to successes, and I think that Sandy and I can lend ourselves to this particular conversation. Unlike the Senate sponsor Scutari, who said he wasn't interested where the money was going, I have to tell you from very early on, and the Senate president can attest to this, I was very much interested in where the money was going, because if we were going to talk about creating a new frontier and an economic development opportunity, how could we not really have a discussion based in honesty, right? So here are the truths. The truths are that Black and brown communities have been most impacted. Here are the truths. The truths are that when you really give one of our students an opportunity to walk into a school district and get the best optimal public school setting provided for them, that child could become anything within the scope of their imagination and reach their maximum potential. Those are the truths. And so when I saw these things forging every time, even though it would get shot down continuously, I wanted to be able to blend those two things together. And I have to tell you that what the Senate did in the last budget meeting with the leadership of our Senate president was really pivot this piece of legislation that was ambiguous at best in making in speaking truth to power. And the pieces that we added in with the Senator Singleton and the Senate president and Senator Scutari and myself and Sandy Cunningham, I think have really shifted the enabling legislation. I really much was not engaged in that, except for the fact that where there were opportunities to strengthen for communities that have been most impacted, that's where I think my voice has lent itself the most in the most recent times. And there are 3 tranches in there. And I know there was a question that came up. So Allison or Kiona, that initially there was a shall that was changed to may. The Senate president has made it very clear. This funding will be utilized for impacted communities and go through 3 tranches, which are education, economic opportunity, and public health in some derivative form of that, which I think is huge and probably the most aggressive in its nature as far as positive impacts in the country. For me, my work has really been nestled in a decrim. There was another question that came up and was like, even though the Attorney General has issued this, and I'm grateful that he took action because the legislature in its totality hasn't taken on decriminalization. It is just as important today as it was to do this 2 years ago, 1 year ago, 2 months ago, 2 weeks ago, to have a statute in place that will prevent individuals for getting picked up for possession and to decriminalize marijuana in the state of New Jersey. I know that there's still some hangups from, I think, our assembly colleagues in this, and I hope that we work this out. We shouldn't waste another day. Senator Cunningham was talking about real numbers of real people who get impacted. The fact that we still don't have a decrim bill on the books and that is signed into law is really a disgrace. as far as policymakers is concerned. That's my own personal opinion. I'm not going to say that about everyone else who's on here, but that's where I think my passion and my policy has lent itself. But I have to tell you, because Senator Cunningham said this the same, you could be one person in the legislature. If you don't have the ear of leadership, then your work goes nowhere. And I will tell you one thing, when the Senate President and I started engaging in some of these things, and I don't think people know this about him, his willingness to listen, to learn, and then to become an advocate. He'll tell you himself, he wasn't here 100% at the beginning. And when he had an opportunity to hear stories, to listen to facts, he really changed his lens. And to me, that is the power of leadership, to be able to say, I'm going to listen, but I'm going to listen for real. It's not going to be something for perception. It's going to be about power. And so I'm grateful for the Senate President for doing that for all of us and for the communities who have been most impacted in this process.
Teresa, thank you. And like I said, the advocacy for yourself, Sandy, Nick, and others was remarkable. But also, it's the advocates too that were working with us on this, and our legal professionals. And I'm going to start. I feel we're very fortunate to have the panel we have, but I want to start with. It says Richard Edwards, but I always thought your name was Todd.
Richard Todd Edwards. That's
Richard
it.
Todd Edwards. I'm not going to call you Richard. I'll do it for now.
It's all love.
So
You can call me whatever you want.
But be careful with that.
Yeah, I know that's right.
You shouldn't have said that.
I thought about it when it came out of my mouth.
Yeah, but you're on, Todd.
I appreciate it.
With the NAACP and your own personal beliefs, what do you say?
Listen, I appreciate you guys, first of all, Senate President, Senator Scutari, all the other electeds. Senator Scutari has been right next to me since 2015, hand in hand, writing this, fighting for this. He is a true advocate for what's right. In the very beginning, he laughed and chuckled, thinking that some of the social justice stuff wouldn't make it in the bill, and then it made it in. And we are appreciative of it, of all the hard work that everyone's done. There are some concerns still in our community. We obviously don't want we want to make for sure that decrim is a priority. I literally got a phone call yesterday. Someone got arrested for small amounts of marijuana. Again, Todd, I thought you said it was over. Rah, 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 rah. We got to do something. People are still paying fines. I'm getting questions on what do we do about the old fines? So I have questions still regarding that, and we can get to that later offline. But there's real concerns with police interaction right now still with small amounts of marijuana. So that's a concern in our community. I just want to make for sure that there's no real caps on the licenses. That's what we're hearing. Like we don't want to obviously overflood it, but we want to have a regulated amount, but not a cap per se on the licenses. We are very pleased that it's looking and going into Black and brown communities, the communities who were most harmed by this war on drugs. The 70-30 split, we're pleased with that, as long as it goes to where Senator Ruiz said, to the schools, to the 3 pipelines that, and Senate President, you've been a man of your word. Like if we don't like it, you're going to tell us what, it's not what we want to hear. It's just the facts. So you gave your word on this and we're good with it. So but all eyes are on you. So I'm like Senator Ruiz, we were watching the money from day one too. We didn't want to be the poster child, like our President Richard Smith says. We don't want to be the poster child of it, and then at the same day get no benefits from it. So that's where we are with it. I appreciate everything that's going on. We're watching the commission. We want to make for sure that this gets off and on the right foot and generate some money for it. And listen, the ACLU has been huge in this whole fight. I don't see them on the panel anywhere, but I definitely want to recognize them. In the last panel I was on with the governor, we got killed in regarding, we didn't give props to the medical marijuana fighters so everyone who fought for the medical marijuana program, we're still fighting for all this. We got it passed by the constituents. We're to the goal line, like Steve says. Senator President always says he's my senator, I'm sorry. but we're to the goal line. We're almost there. Let's just do it right. And I think we're in a good place. I really do. So all eyes on you guys.
Richard.
Yes, Senator Cunningham.
Yes. Have you had any meetings with the NAACP? Have you brought any of them together in a room and talked a little bit about what this is all about and how it will have an impact on what happens in the community? Have you had any leadership meetings with anyone from any of the NAACP statewide to advise and educate them, so to speak?
Absolutely. Since 2015, Senator Cunningham, we've been at the table with New Jersey United for Marijuana Reform. We've been keeping our constituents abreast of this for years now, and everyone is very pleased at where we are with it. To a point, to a point. We need it. All eyes are on the money and the allocation. We want to make for sure too that we don't overtax this, Senator, because the black market is real. So people think that it's not. I mean, I'm one of those statistics who were arrested for a small amount of marijuana. I am a New Jersey licensed funeral director. That was in jeopardy when in 2008 when that happened to me, 2009. Thank God I'm fortunate enough to afford a good lawyer. So I was one of the ones. We've been fighting this. So yes, my constituents are everyone's abreast. People who may not have been at the table or they're ear to it thinking in 2015. Now that it's passed in the last few years, they've been listening. But we've been at the table since I've been the political action chairman since 2015. We got fed into the fire. That was our first thing. That and bail bond reform.
Well, okay, you know how important that was.
Correct.
But Todd, I'm glad you brought up, before I go to the next speaker, the most important thing is affordability. We do not want to tax this to where we just drive everyone to the black market, because the black market's not going away. But if we do this right, we can gain a lot of market share. And that's what we want to do. We want to create jobs. We want to create jobs and give people that made mistakes a second chance. So that's the focus of having a healthy market, which is why the caps on cultivation are just naturally going to keep the cost high. And once this is done, our problem is people are going to wind up going to they'll continue to go to the black market unless we're somewhat competitive. But I'm glad you brought that up, Todd. Next. The person that deals with this in his professional life, when you do get arrested, when you do run into a problem, public defender, Joe Caracoa, Joe, I probably butchered your name.
That's correct.
It's Cora.
Yeah.
Cora. Joe's the guy that deals with this real life all the time. So Joe, how do you see what you've seen and what do you see in the future? What's your view as public defender?
So, I think over the years, there's been no question but that, we've had clients prosecuted in Superior Court for marijuana charges. Typically, it's larger amounts because the lesser amounts are typically in municipal court. But the one thing we have historically seen is the disproportionate prosecution of urban residents, of people of color living in our urban centers on marijuana charges. Some of these are third and fourth degree offenses. They don't necessarily carry prison time, but they are indictable convictions that are on your record that have terrible impact on your ability to do all kinds of things in the world as you go forward. So this is a definite benefit. I mean, I think it's part and parcel of what we now know to be the failure of prosecuting drug offenders disproportionately. I'm still hopeful we can get over the finish line with the elimination of the mandatory minimum on the 1,000-foot law and the other drug laws that have so disproportionately impacted on people in our urban areas. So I think right now the number of people in state prison on marijuana charges is not all that significant. They tend to be people who were growing and selling large amounts, something which I think will become hopefully less profitable and less desirable for the black market growers of the world, and even further reduce the number of people who end up in prison. The other area, Senator, that's going to, I think, be part and parcel of this change in the law is this use of the drug recognition experts. I know there's, provisions here that talk about what rights employers have, pulling drivers over under the suspicion of driving under the influence of marijuana. And that's something we really have to be careful of. The Supreme Court has ordered an evidentiary hearing that's ongoing right now to determine whether these drug recognition experts are even, whether it's even science or whether it's junk science, whether these opinions are even worth the price of the piece of paper they're printed on. But I could see that as being something to keep an eye out on going forward, because I suspect the Supreme Court is going to say that this type of expert testimony to determine whether someone's at the workplace or behind the wheel is under the influence of marijuana is going to be problematic.
Well, Joe, let me ask you a question on that, because that's an area that we keep wrestling with. And so what are we supposed to tell the employers about? We want a drug-free workplace. Now, what I say is, sure, you want a drug-free workplace while people are working, but you can't really set up society that you can't do what you want on your weekends. And the best scenario that we can come up with is a dual testing, someone who gets tested in two ways. And if they're under the influence at the time of employment, then they can be disciplined or fired for that. But I don't believe we should be allowing them to be tested randomly, and then just that they come up dirty on a normal test, that they get fired for that, because it's a constitutionally permissible activity at this point in time.
Yeah, and the other tricky part about marijuana is that it stays in your system considerably longer than say alcohol. So you could test someone at the workplace and have that person come back positive for THC or whatever the active ingredient is, and it doesn't mean the person's under the influence at the time, because it's
right. Well, that's the reason why.
Yeah,
that's why we put the drug recognition analyst program into the new legislation, to try to give someone an additional protection, because assuming they come up positive, then they would be given the chance to be tested, field tested, in addition to that, before they can be disciplined. I mean, wouldn't you agree that's a better way to do things?
It makes a lot of sense. But my only point was, it's contingent upon ultimately the Supreme Court deciding that it's legitimate science.
Well, the Supreme Court's looking at it under the lens of beyond a reasonable doubt, whereas an employment situation is beyond a preponderance of the evidence.
Yeah, or whether that's a good point as to whether or not it's sufficient to prosecute someone successfully for driving under the influence, which, as you point out, is beyond a reasonable doubt is the standard ultimately. So maybe that's the key, Senator. Maybe that's the difference in the analysis.
That's why they got a lawyer on the staff here, me.
But yeah, no, but as a general proposition, I think this is great. I hope we can get this in place sooner rather than later. And it's clearly going to have an impact on especially our citizens in the urban communities who've been subjected far disproportionately to these arrests and the consequences of those arrests on the rest of their lives. So seems like a great thing to me, that's for sure.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. And again, we keep talking about how this has been impacted. The Black and brown communities have been disproportionately impacted. And I got Christian Estevez, who's president of the Latino Action Network. Christian,
thank you, Senator. Thank you, Senate President, for hosting this, and thank you to all the senators, Senator Cunningham, Senator Ruiz, especially Senator Spiteri, for your hard work on this. The Latino Action Network, when I forget what year it was, but I think it was 6-7 years ago when we kind of got involved with this. We had a debate inside of our organization about whether to support legalization and decrim, and it wasn't easy, because many of us, saw the impacts of all kind of substances, including alcohol, right, in our communities. And nobody wanted to, just come out and say, oh, we're for, people abusing or being addicted to anything, right? And it took a lot of discussion, a lot of studying on our part to understand this better, especially to understand what this is really about. And what it really is about is ending the violence, inflicted on our communities. And I say the violence inflicted because, growing up, I grew up associating, drugs with violence. But as I think back to where I saw the real violence was the impact of the police, in many cases, what they did to young people who, for one reason or another, found themselves selling small quantities marijuana just to help get their families get by. And also the economic violence, right? The fact that when you get in trouble, as the public defender said, right, it puts a stain on your employment record, and then that follows you the rest of your life. And so I'm still dealing now through the Latino Action Network and our member organizations who deal with folks reentering society after having been in prison, people who got that stain early on in their lives, and it made it harder for them to get good jobs. And then that kind of led them back to doing other things that had a bigger impact. So, talk about gateways. The gateway is that you get this small stain and it leads to, major impacts that really like mess you up. And so that's really where our concern is we want to end that economic violence against our community. So we've been viewing this entire process and through that lens, and only want to support legislation that is going to help us fix this. So I'm glad to hear that that you have that 70-30 split in terms of helping to right some of those wrongs. Definitely have more questions about how that would work, and I'm sure that Senate President, you could probably explain it to me a lot better in terms of how that would work. But we do want to make sure that that this does create economic opportunities in our communities, and that there's ways to help people of color, Latinos, African Americans access this market. And I think part of that is helping micro businesses have access. We're really concerned about the cost of entering this market and how prohibitive it could be. So we want to make sure that there's ways that the state can help to make that pathway in, so that people can go in that direction instead of participating in the black market. Definitely, I don't want to repeat what everybody else has said, but Todd said a lot. Definitely oppose the caps because we think that with fewer licenses, it's harder for communities of color to get a piece of that pie. So we need to make the pie bigger there if we really want to fix some of those things. And I really want to, thank the public defender for really bringing up the issue of those drug recognition so-called experts and the question about whether that is real science or not. That's one of my concerns. And I know we have the lawyer in the room, but I can speak as the union rep in the room, right? That when someone is suspected by the employer for something, but there's no real proof, that issue of preponderance of evidence, it's really easy to kick somebody out of their job and ruin their lives economically just based on the preponderance or someone suspecting. And it starts to make me think about, what can make somebody suspect that I'm on, that I'm high at the time. Is it because I don't speak English the way you do, or I don't dress exactly the way you do, or I walk a little bit different, that now you're going to suspect that I must be more likely to be high. So you kick me out of my job and you don't have any real proof because there's no science to tell you what level of THC or cannabis you have to have in your system to be considered intoxicated at the moment. So, that is really, really, we can't just think about it in terms of the criminal justice side of it. We need to think about it in terms of the employment side and not make it so easy for employers to just suspect that you are intoxicated, send you to an expert who uses their, biases to decide whether they think that you were intoxicated at the time. We need this to be led by real science. And I think that in these days, we're having a debate in this nation about, do we follow science or do we follow people's opinions? And it's time that we start to follow the science here, because if we don't, we're gonna inflict more violence against our communities. And then what have we done this for? So I thank you for this opportunity, and I definitely want to continue this dialogue because we want to understand more. We want to make sure that that 70% that goes into the community gets spent in the right ways. So we want to stay engaged with that. And we just want to make sure that we do the right thing. And we might have to come back to this a couple more times, right? I think as we find out other things. So thank you for the opportunity.
And Christian, as a labor leader myself, I worry about workers being targeted unjustly also. And this is where you're right. We're going to come back to this. Realize there's never been legislation that has been passed that doesn't get retouched because of the unintended consequences. We're trying to balance employers, workers' rights and employers' rights. If it's alcohol, there's a test. You're blowing a tube, you know what's wrong. They're working on swab tests. They're getting very close to having something. But again, this is something again that we'll be back to, because what's going to happen is we're going to say, that's not how we intended it to work. And what I'm saying? Like, that's everything we do, we come back to. And it's not because we did it wrong. It's because sometimes people interpret or look at it differently than what we thought was crystal clear in the legislation. So I'm glad you brought that up, Christian, because we will be coming back to this over the years. And just like, look where Senator Ruiz has got the decrim and Cunningham has the decrim bill at this point. It's much further, much more progressive, probably the most progressive decrim bill in the country right now. And that's not where we were when we started. But next, I'm going to ask for the bar. Kim, you want to speak for the bar for us?
Sure. Thank you, Senate President Sweeney. We really appreciate the opportunity to be included in this roundtable discussion. As you can imagine, as the president of the largest lawyers organization in the state, there are a number of sections and committees in the State Bar Association who are currently reviewing this legislation. And while the State Bar Association has not taken an official position with regard to the legislation and various components of it, we are generally supportive of this legislation, and we support all of the hard work and efforts of everybody on this call and our legislature. What I don't want to, I don't want to keep hammering some of the things that my colleagues have talked about, Todd, Christian, and Joe. I too am a criminal defense attorney. I was a prosecutor for 10 years up in Hudson County, New Jersey. So I have seen the ramifications of the criminalization of the marijuana laws on both sides of the V. And I can tell you that it is truly disappointing and upsetting when you see the disparate impact that these laws have had on our Black and Brown communities. And so one thing I can tell you from the State Bar's perspective, I created a commission on racial equity in the law this past summer, 6 months ago, and we have had a number of meetings, this commission. We have brought together leaders from across the state with regard to making sure that we try to end systemic racism in our state, in the courts, and in our profession of law. And one topic of discussion that has come up most recently is the idea that we reinvest in our urban communities. And I think with regard to this legislation and the revenue that's coming in from it. So it is really, really good thing to hear, Senate President, from you and from your colleagues, that this reinvestment in our urban communities is something that we're looking to do and that you're looking to do for the future. And I'm going to be very happy to report that back to the Commission and the State Bar Association. We also have our municipal court practice section, which is very concerned about the drug recognition experts, as we've talked about. So I won't go into it, but I know that State versus Olenowski is where the Supreme Court is looking at that, and they have a special master reviewing the science behind it, as my colleague Joe Kokora has aptly pointed out. One thing that has not been discussed today, and I think it really goes into the tail end of what we're discussing with regard to social justice, and that is expungements. And I know that this legislation doesn't really go into expungements as much as maybe others would like to see it go into, but I offer it as something where if you're willing to, the State Bar Association would be happy to work with you on more details of expungements. I can tell you that as a prosecutor and as a former prosecutor and as a defense lawyer, now as a private defense lawyer, I do not handle expungements because they are so tedious and time consuming to handle that I can't imagine how a regular citizen in the state of New Jersey would do it themselves without hiring an attorney. They are so difficult. And right now, the caps that we have on expungements make it so that even people with these low-level disorderly persons offenses cannot get expunged records. And there is this, idea that there's this clean slate, but it's still hard to jump through those hoops in order to get that clean slate. So it's something that I'm hoping that we could talk about further. As you said, I know the legislation is a work in progress and the rulemaking and the regulatory aspects of it, but it is certainly something that I am concerned about, especially for my clients, and especially since I do volunteer some of my time, my free time, to working with people who have recently come out of prison and are going through the reentry program in order to help them go back to their municipal court fines. We have so many people who are in state prison and they come out and they have no way to get back and have a regular life because they have their licenses suspended, because they have because of marijuana and other types of possession issues. So they have to go back to these municipal courts to handle them. And there are many attorneys that handle these pro bono, and we go to municipal courts to try to get these fines reduced so that they can get their licenses back. But, having those low-level offenses on your record and not being able to expunge them can seriously hurt somebody as they're trying to redo their life and try to get back into an employment situation that makes it better for themselves and their family. So hopefully we can try to work together to work on that part of the legislation as well. And I thank you for this time and the opportunity to be heard.
Thanks, Kim. And, expungement is a huge issue, and this was our first crack at it because we know that there's going to be so many people moving to get, how many thousands of people are going to want to get their records expunged? You know what I mean? So we thought this was and I can call on Senator Ruiz. I know she was tackling this.
Yeah.
I think we did the best in the situation we're in. But go ahead, Senator.
So in the decrim piece, it's not in the enabling. In the decrim, it speaks a little bit to what you're talking about. Pending charges would completely get dropped, but there was some public conversation about, does that fully clean the record or does it still appear on somebody's jacket? We're going to do some cleanup language in the enabling to kind of smooth over those issues. But I know that Senator Cunningham and myself have already had this discussion, and we will be talking with AOC and would love your input because we know expungement in general as a whole, while we made great strides, you're right, there's access points that we have to make clear. It still requires some kind of education on behalf of the constituent to be aware who they can reach out to, does it require funding, et cetera. So we know we're inherently aware that there's work that has to get done.
Yeah, we worked with the courts, and and this was what we thought they could handle at this time. Kim,
right,
realizing they're the ones at the end of the day are dealing with this. It's we don't want them to fail. So, we have more work to do. We know we do. Not an argument at all over that. We are concerned about someone saying, hey, my records, I've never been arrested because we told them your record's been expunged. You know what I mean? And then the employer easily finds the record, But remember, with Ban the Box, which was Senator Cunningham's one of our landmark pieces of legislation, you can't ask anybody if they were incarcerated until you're getting ready to make that hire. So you know what I'm saying? And I think that's when you can have a dialogue with your future employer where, because when you get to that final interview, normally you never get to that final interview if you've been arrested. People will just, that's why we did Ban the Box, so that the door wasn't slammed closed to you. So now when you get to that final interview, you can have a conversation. You can say, my record's going to be expunged. It is expunged, but we have more work to do, but it gets you in a better place, to get that employment. But we will absolutely be working with you in the courts, and Joe with public defenders.
Yeah, I was going to say, if I could jump in real quick, we have a very well-established apparatus in place for processing expungements of drug court graduates, which is an across-the-board cleaning of the slate for drug court graduates, which is a tremendous thing, but it's a great deal of work. But in any event, I would certainly offer up my office's assistance in any kind of expungement program going forward with the marijuana legalization, because we already have in place, we actually have some attorney assistant positions where primary piece of that job is processing drug court expungements, which require us to reach out to every municipality and every law enforcement agency where our drug court graduate clients have ever been unfortunately involved. And so we have a sense of how to do it. So if there's a point where my office's services can assist in processing expungements for the marijuana folks down the road, we'll do the best we can to help out on that. So I'll throw that in the mix.
Joe, I appreciate that. I wasn't aware of that. And for us, again, how many thousands of people that have been arrested with low weights marijuana, how many thousands of people we're going to have to get expunged, including my friend Richard Edwards, not Todd, Richard. But our last speaker, and I don't want to screw this up, and then we can open up for questions. Safir. I can't say his last name. I'm not even going to try. Is he on? Is he on? I don't see him here.
I think he was the person who was having a problem.
Yeah.
With
Well,
his,
listen, I had a bigger problem saying his name. So,
yeah.
but with that, does anybody want to add anything or questions of anyone? Look, I think we made very clear where the money we intend, the Senate, where we intend the funding to go. I don't think there's any ambiguity at all. You know what I mean? I think we've made it very clear. We want to reinvest the money in the communities that have been harmed the most. And that's spelled out. There's one little change we have to make because Salem City is too small. But Salem City is actually the smallest, the poorest community in the state of New Jersey. They rank #1. But otherwise, we spelled out the communities that we look for this money to be invested in. The tranches of money Senator Ruiz spoke about. So I think we made our intentions very clear in the Senate.
And that was through a formula. And Salem City was basically didn't make the population size, and they were going to be, not able to have a license or reap the benefits, let's say, of the marijuana money. And you're making it possible.
And I would take anyone that wants to take a tour of Salem City. I would be happy to show you, because we have a lot of poverty in this state. It's a very wealthy state, but there's a lot of poverty. And rural is much different than urban. None of it's good, but rural.
At the same time, we don't want weed dispensaries on every corner like we have liquor stores and the whole nine in our communities, because we were most harm behind it. We want to get money other ways.
Yeah, and Todd, that's why we created the Marijuana Commission, which is to regulate it like they did the Casino Commission. It's a new industry, and we want to ensure that commission, we don't wind up with a store on every corner. We don't want to saturate communities, especially the communities already been plagued by this. So again, I think that my colleagues have done a very, very good job, and that we've come a long way. And I think they've listened to the advocates. There was money wasn't dedicated or wasn't said where it was going to go before. It is clear now. I said we made it very clear, and that's something the Senate's going to have to stick with.
Senator.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, the commission, and I think you're talking about the registry commission. We definitely want to make sure that the appointees to those commissions are folks who are really rooted in the community, and aren't just like recycled, the pros in recycling. We have different organizations that have been involved with this, have identified folks that really do have that rooting in the community, and we hope that they're the ones that are going to be there, because they're the ones who are going to have their hearts in the right place to make sure that, as Todd said, we have to strike a serious balance here, right? We don't want to flood our communities, right? Like with the liquor, like there are with liquor stores on every corner, but also we want to make sure that we have our fair share in terms of, you know, places for people to go, you know, if they, you know, to get it, but also that the, you know, the money is coming in from the profits that are being made in other places, because we know, and I know growing up in Plainfield, you know, that the customers weren't the people necessarily in Plainfield. It was from all the surrounding suburbs that were coming in to buy. And then after those customers left, the cops would come in and bust the dealer, right? So we definitely want to have a seat at that table. We appreciate you considering the folks that we've put forward.
Steve, can I say something?
Sure.
Christian, I do want to thank you for bringing that up, what you just talked about. You know, and the reason that I asked Richard Edwards about the NAACP meeting with the community in Jersey City, the African-American community is definitely not on board completely. They're not on board. They still have a lot of concerns. I think it's important that we educate our communities as much as possible as to what to expect, what not to expect. It is very important that we keep them abreast of what is happening as it is happening. And it's very important that they understand the realities of how this is going to work. And Richard, you said that you've been talking to the NAACP. Please reach out to the Hudson County NAACP so that
I just got an email. I just got an email from them, and I asked all of them. Well, and it's five presidents that want to sit down with Senator Scutari, and I invited them to this Zoom as a first step, and then we will. I was going to literally yesterday. I got the email.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
No problem.
Please keep me abreast if you can.
My pleasure, always.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Hey, listen, I think this was an important conversation to be had. We have to be much more public about marijuana and our intents and what we're expecting from this industry. And that was the purpose of this Zoom call today. I wish we could all be in person. Unfortunately, we are where we're at. But look, this is a good start, and we're here to listen, especially Kim with the expungement piece. We know that's huge.
Yeah.
Good information, which we appreciate. But think about the thousands upon thousands of people that are going to be looking. You know, a lot of people got arrested for this.
Yes.
That's why, Senate President Sweeney, I think the process itself, and many of our lawyers who do that kind of thing could probably be very insightful as to how that works, because what a lawyer has to do privately in order to get an expungement, it's a lot of steps. It's a lot of essentially, you know, background checks with the state police, the local police, and it could be multiple municipalities, as Joe Kokora pointed out, or it could just be one. But if you send it to the wrong person, I've seen it happen to me. You get it back and you have to start the whole process over again, because the court will say, well, you didn't get this particular document certified. And, you know, as a law clerk 20 something years ago, I saw regular citizens have to walk out of the courthouse thinking that they were getting their expungement, and then they weren't getting it because they didn't get some kind of document done properly. So there are steps in the process, I think, that we could make it easier for everyone, including the courts, but still make it so that all of the steps are being taken. It could just make it easier.
Well, you know, Kim, if there's a way of streamlining it or really making it a hell of a lot easier than it is right now for marijuana possession, you know what I mean? If we could come up with a more streamlined process that makes it easier so we can get these people through quicker. I'm sure I'm looking at Senator Scutari and Ruiz.
You gotta get off.
I know, but these are things that we're more than willing to work with the courts on, because you always can do things better. We don't have to make it hard. There has to be a way to, like the way you described it. I'm sure that you have several thoughts on how we can improve the process.
Certainly. So we're happy to work with you, Senator Ruiz. It's definitely, I can have our staff get in touch.
And also contact me. I've done a lot of expungement legislation, including a clean slate. So I would love to talk.
Yeah, I was
Yeah,
gonna say,
please,
Sandy,
please
you've done a
do.
ton of
And
it.
we have staff on here now, actually, at 3 o'clock, they're gonna be talking to the AOC to start smoothing out these issues, so the sooner the better, but the key here is that we're aware, we recognize it, and we know that we have to do something about it, so at least we're right there.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, everyone. Thanks.
Thank
And
you.
I'm sure we'll be talking more about this in the future.
Thank
Thank
you,
you all.
everybody. Thanks,
Thank
Senate
you.
President. Bye.
Bye-bye.